When you mentioned the concept of fair exchange there, John, would you mind elaborating on that just a little bit as how your meaning to that?
Well, each of us have a moving volatility in our own perceptions of ourselves. Sometimes we puff ourselves up and get proud. Sometimes we beat ourselves up and get shamed. The volatility is minimal in people that have self-governance and more radical in people that are out of control. One is, you might say, the executive center, which is self-governing, and one is the amygdala, which is out of control, the animal within, the wild animal. Whenever we puff ourselves up and exaggerate ourselves and think we know what's best, and we become autocratic and dictatorial and project our values onto both employees and customers, we lose contact with the very source of our income and a source of what drives business and service. So if we puff ourselves up, we're out of fair exchange. We tend to think we know best, and we're not paying attention to what the market is actually asking for. There's no demands, in other words. On the other pole, if we minimize ourselves and negate ourselves, we automatically will tend to negotiate away our profits because we'll think that others are more important than us. And that usually ends up making it where we don't save. In fact, shame and guilt are the number one things that undermine people from holding on to money. And so both of those poles are unstable, and both of them lead to not a development of sustainable wealth. But if we have equanimity within ourselves, which is an even-mindedness, not a puffing or a deflating, but equanimity, and we have equity between ourselves and others, which is the key behind equity theory if you study it, and we care about our customer, our employee, and ourselves, and we make sure that each is getting fairly exchanged and people are getting it, we create sustainability. And it's much easier and wiser to have a sustainable building of a culture of people and clients than it is to constantly have to renew that all the time. And so it actually has a greater profit margin, it has a greater service, and it builds a greater long-term brand. So having a fair exchange and equity is essential. And that's not going to happen from overly proud or overly shamed states of mind. It's going to come from a state where we're actually fulfilling a purpose of service that we care about that we also want to be rewarded by. I tell people in my seminars, as I travel the world, I said, I want you to go out and do the greatest altruistic service you possibly can in your life. And I want you to have the greatest narcissistic rewards you can have in life, and not one over the other, but have them balanced and have it. The Book of Wealth emphasizes this, and I see absolutely everything I've studied points to that outcome.
Absolutely. Let you grab a drink of water there. So one of the, wrap up with one of the equations that you gave to me at a finance talk on the world, actually, on your ship a few years ago, where it was very simple but unbelievably powerful, which was that and it builds nicely off of the idea of fair exchange. Self-worth plus other worth equals your net worth. And I love to refer to that when I get the chance when I'm talking about money. And people look at it confused, and then I go, oh, just wait till you hear what this actually means. But I'd much rather come and show you.
It's almost identical to what I just said.
Yeah.
When you're puffed up, you tend to get narcissistic. When you put yourself down, you tend to get altruistic. And so it's just, if we think of it this way, imagine you did a transaction with somebody, and you did a service, and they paid you. But they paid you less than what you felt it was worth and what you requested. And you told them what the price was up front, but they didn't pay it all. You'll probably go into a narcissistic mode and say, damn it, I deserve more than that. But if you're on the other side of the transaction where you did a service, maybe consulting or something, and you didn't feel you gave them what you hoped to get them, and they paid the amount, but you didn't feel like you really delivered on the service level, you go altruistic because you want a fair exchange, because you have a built-in thermostat inside you for fair exchange. It's automatically in people. The real person is as a fair exchange person. The facades and personas that we wear sometimes throw those off, but we eventually get humbled and get back to the center. And so self-worth is the narcissistic side. Other worth is the altruistic side. And when those are balanced, the self-worth equals the other worth is what creates the net worth, because you have a sustainable fair exchange. But if you go narcissistic, you got self-worth but no other worth, you got no service, no income. If you got other worth and no self-worth, you serve a lot of people, but you give away at the profit margins you don't keep. You're not worthy of keeping. You put them in balance, you accumulated wealth with sustainable fair exchange. This is the key.
Perfect. So, and I remember you put it another way was self-worth is how much you save, other worth is how much you serve, which ultimately is your network, which is absolutely yeah, great stuff. Well, just before we wrap up here this evening,